Well, it's being dubbed as a historic agreement. Benjamin Netanyahu says it is an historic mistake. So, which is it, or is it somewhere in between? Nevertheless, it was early, right around dawn on Sunday morning in Europe, in Geneva, that the P5+1 powers reached an agreement with Iran. Now, there had been no agreement with Iran for many years. This all began in 1979, of course, when the Ayatollah Khomeini overthrew the government of the Shah of Iran and set up the present regime. So we're talking about 30-plus years since that happened. Now, all of a sudden, Iran seems to be wanting to come out of the shadows and to become a part of the world community. Now, is this really as it seems, or is this just something that was produced because of necessity? We know the sanctions have been biting into the economy and the fiber of the Iranian society for quite a long time now. And so consequently, many people believe that's what brought Iran to the table finally. Now, that Benjamin Netanyahu said, look, just when they're reaching the point where they're willing to submit to the will of the world community, you decide to let your foot off of their neck. And now you're going to undo all the good that's been done. Let's see if we can recap this whole thing. Okay, what really happened here? Well, what was it, back in 2003? Iran was found to be pushing toward a nuclear weapon. She had signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which meant that she would not move toward a nuclear weapon, and yet there was absolute evidence found that she was indeed. So consequently, Iran apologized and said, we won't do it again, backed off from what they were doing. But then they cranked up their nuclear proliferation, their nuclear enrichment program once again. And immediately Israel began to scream, hey, they are moving toward a nuclear weapon again. Now, it didn't help any that Mr. Mohammad Ahmadinejad, the president of Iran, kept saying Israel is going to be wiped off of the map. It is the little Satan. The United States is the big Satan. He was continually occupying the airways with bellicose threats and with all kinds of cursings. Well, this didn't help any, especially since Israel is a one-bomb state. One nuclear bomb on the nation of Israel wipes Israel out. So Israel said these threats coming from Iran, these are existential threats. They threaten the very existence of the nation of Israel. After all, we've been without a nation for 2,000 years. Now we just get our own nation, and this power from the East, Iran, historic Persia, is now threatening to do it all over again, to wipe us out again. It seemed like the voice of Adolf Hitler #2. So Israel reacted quite strongly about it, but the United States wanted to be the peacemakers, so they moved in, and especially under President Obama, they began to conduct secret talks. The reports are that these talks have now been ongoing in secret for the last 1 year or so. Finally, they came together this weekend. They'd already tried a couple of times, but they came together this weekend, and it looked like they were going to get a deal. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu, understanding the deal they were going to get, said it's going to be an historic mistake. And he traveled around the world, making speeches, talking to heads of state, trying to convince them. Right now, Iran, the reason they're even wanting to talk seriously is because they're now hurting. The sanctions are biting in. If you compromise now, you're going to have to start all over someday. Or maybe you never will start over. Maybe the next step will be Iran is a nuclear power. Now, let me slow down a minute because I want to make sure you understand. Israel says Iran is trying to become a nuclear power. The evidence offered is this: they are continuing to expand their nuclear enrichment program. They have some places they will not let the international inspectors go. They are creating intercontinental ballistic missiles that the only purpose of them would be to deliver nuclear weapons. And so Netanyahu says they are pursuing nuclear weapons. all the time claiming they are not, that they simply are enriching uranium for domestic consumption. Now, the people on the other side say, wait a minute, why are you producing nuclear power for domestic consumption? You're one of the richest nations in oil in the world. You've got plenty of oil. Gasoline is dirt cheap there. Why in the world would you invest all this money in nuclear enrichment if you're not really trying to produce a nuclear bomb? Now, Iran has dreams of being a great world power. As a matter of fact, her religion mandates that it's so, because the people who rule Iran are among those called the Twelvers, a relatively small sect of Muslims who believe that the 12th Imam appeared on the world scene 1,000 years ago, but he did not find conditions to receive him ripe. So consequently, he supposedly hid in a well or some other place until the world was ready to receive him. They believe that time has now arrived, and according to their prophecies, there will be a great war resulting in global chaos just before the Mahdi is revealed. Well, that's the reason that they are preparing for what they're doing. They believe that it's part of their responsibility to perpetrate this war that will bring about the appearance of the Mahdi. In order to do this successfully, they need nuclear weapons. So that's part of what's going on religiously behind the scenes. Now, Israel knows all of this. Israel has done their homework. They understand a lot of what is motivating all this. Iran, in the meantime, continues to say, we have no desire to develop nuclear weapons. Yet, everybody knows that it's written in the Quran that if it's for the purposes of propagating Islam, you can lie to deceive your enemy so that you can actually serve Muhammad and Allah in order to propagate the rulership of the world, which is what all Muslims believe should ultimately happen. They believe they are called to take over the world for Muhammad, for Allah. And so consequently, understanding this, we see militant Islam filling London, filling Great Britain, 10 million of them now in France, and becoming a tremendous force everywhere they go. Just today, one nation outlawed Islam, and they are now in the process of destroying all their mosques. They're saying, we're just not going to allow you to get a foothold in our country, and we are not going to tolerate it. So they have outlawed Islam. They believe it is such a threat to their society and their world that they're not simply going to allow Islamists to dwell among them. If they want to be Islamic, they can go somewhere else. They say our nation is a Christian nation, and it's going to stay that way. So anyway, I'm trying to give you a little bit of an oversight of what is going on here. Now, President Obama says if we can settle this peacefully, we need to. Israel already has made a couple of trial runs. It is believed that Israel does have the capability of wiping out the nuclear capability of Iran, and yet at the same time, there are a lot of risk involved. I mean, Iran, after all, what are we talking about? 60, 70, 80 million people, very wealthy, all rich, and for little Israel to take that on is quite a daunting task. The United States, in the meantime, says, look, let us try diplomacy first, and if that doesn't work, then we will attack Iran with you. We'll do it together, and that way. But in the meantime, let's settle it by peaceful means instead. So consequently, that's what's been happening over the weekend. Well, they finally say we've got a deal. Now, let's be clear. This is not a permanent deal. This is a 6-month interim deal. And this 6-month interim deal calls for Iran to not expand its program any further, to not add any more centrifuges, to stop its heavy water nuclear reactor in Iraq, which they claim now that they are willing to do. In the meantime, the international community, the P5+1 powers, say we're going to not impose any new sanctions, plus we're going to let off on some of the sanctions presently imposed as a reward for you making these moves toward good behavior. In the meantime, we're going to be negotiating over the next 6 months to get a final deal. And if you violate the terms of the agreement in that 6-month period, then we're going to reimpose all the sanctions plus additional sanctions. So that's where we are right now. That's what's happened over the weekend. Again, John Kerry, Barack Obama claimed this is a great victory for diplomacy. And now then we're seeing something else happen. We're seeing a new way to solve the problems of the world. The new way to solve the problems of the world is for the P5+1 to go negotiate. Now, we know that many people have gone to the UN Security Council and they've had trouble getting action there because one or more of the permanent members will veto whatever is being passed there at the UN Security Council. For example, they tried to get a resolution against Bashar Assad of Syria, and Russia and China vetoed it, so they couldn't get it through. Well, now then they've backed off. They're taking a different approach, and they have taken the P5, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, and they've come out of the UN chambers, and they are now negotiating sometimes privately, sometimes secretly, and then openly, as happened over the weekend. They also have added to their number Germany, because Germany is now such a powerful player, more powerful than France, more powerful than Great Britain, more powerful possibly than the other powers. Germany right now is the controlling factor in Europe, and Europe is the world's #1 economy. They passed the United States in the year 2008. So anyway, Germany is rising again. Don't look now. They started the last 3 major wars: Franco-German War of 1870, World War I, World War II. Well, guess what? They're back with a vengeance. They ran a trade surplus last year of 6.2%, while we were in horrible deficit here in the United States. That means that they made more money than they spent, which means they either invested it or they put it in the bank. And they have money to loan. They're loaning money with conditions to the poor nations that make up the European Union, and thus owe their financial existence. They now are trying to conform to the wishes of Germany in order to get the bailouts that they so desperately need and desire. So anyway, that's what's going on right now. It's very interesting when you see the whole thing. Now, we're taking your calls on the program today. Immediately after this break, the number to call, 877-END-TIME, 877-363-8463. You're listening to Politics and Religion, and we'll be back with you in just 1 minute.